let's just get right into it. Save time for everybody because we are finally ahead of schedule. Alrighty, we are good there. That looks good there. Perfect. A little clap for my extra recording that I'm going to have. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Fishing the DMV. I'm your host, Thomas Aarons, and we are back live from Augusta County. We're going to be here till 3 p.m. today. And joining me again, a great episode we had last year. I think it was at this event. I'm back here. Tommy, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
A lot has happened in the past year when it comes to the South River or the Shenandoah. It's been a crazy year.
Yes, really struggled a little bit through the year with the droughts, but had some project work in town on the South River, some additional structures going in the river. So we had some muddy water days in low water in the summer while that was happening. Then we were really low through the summer on the Shenandoah, on the South Fork. So it was a very interesting summer.
Did the hurricane or any of those extreme rain conditions we get in September and October, did that affect anything?
We got some pretty big blowouts. We saw 12 feet on the river gauge in town in Waynesboro. So it moved some things around. It changed some pools, cleaned out some silt and debris, but it also brought some new stuff in. We're still figuring out some of that from late September there. I've seen some changes on the South Fork, but so far the places I expected to find winter smallmouth, I'm finding them there. So we were out a couple times in December and early January and didn't seem to see there's definitely changes. Some wood's gone, but some new wood's there. But overall, I'd say we probably got the scour we needed because we had been so dry.
Mm-hmm. How's the trout fishing been?
It's been very good so far this year. Even though it was a low water summer, we had good temperatures. So we had pretty good holdovers on the stock trout there in the catch and release in Waynesboro. The overall size is maybe a little bit smaller. There's a lot of 10, 11-inch browns being caught. Rainbows are still in that 10 to 14, 15-inch average, with a few bigger fish around.
Okay.
So we're not seeing 20-plus inch trout very often, but we're seeing that 16 to 18 2-pound trout pretty frequently.
I mean, that's not bad. I mean, I wouldn't consider that a bad deal to be if you're an angler.
There's more numbers. The numbers are really good.
Mm-hmm. How has business been this past year?
Picking up. Been kind of picking up all through the fall and winter. Once we got some water. The drought is just, I think, tough on the industry overall. And 2 years back-to-back of drought really was brutal.
Mm-hmm. No. I mean, I know like with the North and the South Fork of the Shenandoah, it was, you couldn't get a kayak. You would have to have a specialty kayak or a raft because nothing was getting up there for such a long time. And I mean, it just makes it, a lot of it's just not accessible. And I've wondered, I think that's more of an angler inconvenience than a fish, I guess, because I guess that just means they get less pressured, honestly.
Exactly. There were days I went out in July and August where I would normally at least see a couple of other anglers, a couple of kayakers, another raft. There was nobody out. Just kind of, people got frustrated with the low water, with beating up their boats, and they just weren't going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's tough on the industry, but it's easy on the fish. They were definitely spooky still, though.
I can believe it. I mean, anywhere you go, when you get clean, shallow water, they're going to get spooky. Since we've gotten so much bigger this past year with so many more viewers and subscribers to the channel, for people that don't know, what is a Cliff Note version? What is the South River specifically?
So the South River is the southernmost, easternmost tributary to the South Fork of the Shenandoah. Obviously, that's going to become the Potomac at Harper's Ferry. So we're mostly a spring-fed valley floor stream. We do have some mountain streams that come out of the skyline or out of the Blue Ridge that do feed into the South River before it reaches Port Republic. You've got the Big Levels complex south of Waynesboro, about 30,000 acres of national forest back there. That's a multitude of small little 3-4 foot wide creeks that do have some native brook trout in them. They're pretty acidic, but they're part of the watershed for the South River. And then Back Creek near Shenandoah. So we're kind of that valley floor spring fed limestone with some big freestone and small freestone tributaries coming in, similar to what you'd see like up in the Cumberland Valley in PA.
Okay.
You know, that little bit of Blue Ridge influence, but a lot of limestone valley floor influence.
Do you have a native trout population, or is it all just stocked?
In town, we rarely see any native fish. It does happen. We do have these big springs that are cold, and in the summer, you'll sometimes find a few natives, 2 or 3, sitting on one of those springs that have come out of the mountain tributaries and, you know, found a better food source and cold enough water there in town, but it's pretty rare. Yeah, I'll get 1 or 2 a year.
Oh, wow. Wow, that is rare. Goodness gracious. But smallmouth are also something that you predominantly target?
Yes. More on the Shenandoah than the south. Just in town, our water is just a little cool. Cool enough for trout, so it's a little cool on the smallies. They typically in town, if we see a 1.5 pound, 2-pound smallmouth, that's a really big fish. See pretty fair numbers of that juvenile fish, that 6 to 9 inch fish. But you know, they're competing with the trout that are there too. So it's definitely, you know, if you go throw a little jig in town targeting smallmouth in the summer, you're probably gonna have a few trout try to eat it.
When you say river, it's interesting because you have the Susquehanna River, and it's about 10 miles wide.
Yeah.
And then you have the North Fork of the Shenandoah, where you could throw a baseball across, just so people can visualize it. Like, how wide are we talking?
So the south in town is 30 to 40 feet wide, maybe 50 on a big pool. So it's small. The South Fork of the Shenandoah is not all that big. You know, we target the Elkton area and Luray area of the South Fork of the Shenandoah. It's maybe 100 yards wide.
Yeah.
You know, so we're not fishing really big water here. But there's a lot of ledge and bedrock in all of this system. So there's 10, 15 foot deep holes, 20 foot deep holes here and there. You know, there's a lot of cobble and ledge, a lot of crawfish habitat, a lot of sculpins and dace and darters, and yeah, so that it's a very rich system. I mean, it's, you know, that pH is good from all that limestone. It's a very rich, diverse system. I mean, there's 20 plus species of forage fish in Waynesboro on the south.
Are you having the muskie, the walleye, things like that were stocked on the Shenandoah? Have they made it up that way yet?
We see the muskie.
Really? Okay.
You know, there's certain spots, they seem to be kind of pool oriented. They like certain places, they don't like other places, but we see the muskie on the South Fork, occasionally on the lower south, down near grottos. Only once that I know of in town in Waynesboro have we seen a muskie make it up that far. It was a pretty big one. It was over 3 foot. Had it taken trout from people. But that's, you know, that only once have we seen that in 15 years. Wow. But we do see them occasionally further down the south around grottos, Grand Caverns, Town Park. And then once you hit the mouth of the South River and the North meeting there at Port Republic, the headwaters of the South Fork, that's a muskie pool right there. You'll find muskies in that pool fairly regularly at that junction pool.
Would you still consider your guide service, and of course, guys, we're going to talk about his fly shop too, trout, then smallmouth, are muskie ever something you foresee yourself dabbling in as something to specifically pursue?
We don't specifically pursue them, but we do have some of our regular clients that, you know, when they go out with us on the Shenandoah, hey, you know, is it good to try for muskie today? And we bring a rod along.
Okay.
And we're very particular about that. I mean, we kind of have to know the client, have a relationship, and we're also particular about the conditions. I'm not going to go out there in July on a 90-degree day and have somebody target a muskie. It's going to kill that fish if we hook it.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me because, like with the snakeheads, for example, there's a lot of guys that have had that are pivoting because they realize there's a market now that people want to just pursue them, and with the muskie getting more established in position parts of the Shenandoah, I wonder if that's going to happen in 5 to 10 years, where people are going to travel to the Shenandoah Valley specifically just to target muskie as well. If that's going to be an evolution.
There's some of that happening.
There is. Okay, interesting.
We're not a big part of that.
Yeah. But
there's some of that happening. There's a few guides that are consistently booking trips and going after them. Like I say, for us, it's more of we know kind of where we're going to find them. If the conditions are good, we'll give it a shot. We get a few a year. 3-4 muskie a year.
What I see with this area is it a trout culture first and foremost in this area?
It's very trout focused here, and so the valley, as you know, doesn't hold water well.
Yeah.
So we just don't have the big lakes and reservoirs. We're too porous. So it's if you don't have a farm pond that you have access to, or go up in the national forest to some of the flood control dams or the fairly sterile lakes, and they get stocked with trout. But you've got some largemouth fishing in those lakes, but they're small, 20, 30, 40 acres. And they're pretty sterile because they're up on the ridge. The trout are the main food source for the largemouth in those lakes, the stock trout. So we have to travel across the mountain or south or north to get to a reservoir, Lake Anna, Smith Mountain. We've got a couple-hour drive, hour and a half, 2-hour drive to get out on some of those bigger reservoirs to target largemouth. So the anglers in the valley are typically very trout or smallmouth focused.
So guys, I did see the question that came over Instagram. What kind of trout are you guys targeting? Browns, tigers, rainbows? ?
So we're mostly rainbows and browns on the south.
I didn't know those browns. Cool.
They're stocked. We have fingerling stocking on the south above town. We have stocker stocking 10 to 12-inch browns in town. We're currently working on getting some private stocking of browns. That's difficult because they're more expensive for a hatchery to grow.
Interesting.
For a private hatchery, private hatchery wants to make money, so they want to turn fish. Browns take longer. So we're working on with a private hatchery currently to have them grow some browns for us outside of the genetics that the state is growing. Hopefully some better genetics.
Interesting.
But for the most part, it's rainbows and browns. There's a lot of stocking on the South River, both public and private. So there are some tigers get in there, some brook trout stocking. They typically don't hold as well as the rainbows and browns through the summer. So that's that predominant species that makes it through the summer is the rainbows and browns. And like I said, we also target native brook trout as a guide service, but we're doing that more in the national forest, to the west and south, along the Alleghenies or the southern Blue Ridge. We're 30 minutes from St. Mary's. We're 45, 50 minutes from Ramsey's Draft Wilderness, North River, over to the west of Stanton. So there's some good native brook trout fishing around. It's very seasonal. If we have a dry summer, it's non-existent. You can't go after them.
And that's something a new thing that I learned in my vocabulary working with Maryland's department, that you have, in Maryland, you have specific places where, like, this is only for fly fishing, this is put and take, and this is, like, year-round. What are these fisheries classified? Would they be year-round, like, specifically fly fishing? How would you...
So Virginia's trout is a year-round.
Okay.
We don't have a closed season. Our native brook trout fisheries will start at the top of the ridge. Our native brook trout fisheries are the high country, above 1,800 feet elevation, small streams for the most part.
Damn.
They are been here since the last ice age. They're remnant populations
That's
of
a
the
hell of a
northern brook
hike
trout.
to get up to catch a fish. Good Lord.
So your small stream fishing, 10 to 15 foot wide creek is a big creek.
Okay.
5 to 7 to 10 foot wide creeks with a little short rod, and it's very seasonal. Our best part of the year for that is from now till May.
Okay. Good to know.
They spawn in the fall, so we typically leave them alone from late September to mid-December. And if we're cold in December and January, they're going to go kind of dormant. If we're in the 35, 40 degree water temperature range, they're going to go dormant.
Trout go dormant. I didn't know they actually had.
They're not dormant,
Yeah.
but their metabolism slows down to the point where there's 30 fish in a pool, and it's clear, gin clear. You can't see them. They're tucked under a rock.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And
Wow.
you fish that pool, and the water temperature's 38 degrees, and you might get a bump on a nymph. Drifting a nymph through that pool. You might get one fish out of it. You come back 3 weeks later, and the water temperature's 42 degrees, you catch 5 out of that pool, and you see 20. They're very water temperature oriented. They've been here for 30,000 years. They figured it out.
Did this big chill that we got in January, I could be wrong, but this is like one of the coldest winters in the past 10 years. The Susquehanna, for God's sakes, froze over.
Yeah.
Did that really negatively impact the fishery around here?
No. So the South being spring fed, and you think about those springs, everybody thinks about summer. Spring's going to make it cooler. The fish are going to be happier. The same thing happens in the winter. That water temperature coming out of a deep crevice in the earth is 52 degrees. Summer, spring, winter, fall. That spring water's 52 degrees. We had no ice in Waynesboro on the South River.
Wow. That is so cool. I mean, there you guys go. I mean, if you want to book a winter trip, this is the area you want to go in, because no matter what, man, you're not going to have to deal with frozen ice out conditions.
Now, 20 degrees and your guide's freezing, and it's still a rough day. But there's going to be some fish eating. There's going to be 42 degree water, 45 degree water. When everything else is sub 40.
Interesting. Question I had yesterday in chat that I didn't get to answer. I had no trout guys on. Is what is a good entry-level trout setup fly rod wise, just to get somebody to get into this drug that is fly fishing?
We sell a lot of the Echo brand out of Washington State. They're a working man's budget price rod company in general. Their most expensive fly rod's $500. But they have a Traverse kit. It's a kit, rod, reel, line backing for $269.
Okay, there you go.
And it comes in a 9-foot 5-weight, which is a good all-around trout rod, light smallmouth. The 5-weight just doesn't handle the bigger smallmouth flies well, but that's our best seller. Reddington also has a similar outfit for a little bit less. Not quite as easy a rod to cast, but a good one. It's about $259.
Okay.
So if you get much below that, you start getting really lousy reels and really lousy lines. And the line really matters when it comes to fly fishing. A lousy line will make a $1,000 rod a piece of junk. A good line will make a $100 rod a lot better.
And if you guys have any questions, drop them in chat real quick so I can get them answered. Because the first question I have in mind is can you go down the rabbit hole that like other communities with fluorocarbons, monofilaments, copy polymer kind of lines?
The fluorocarbon's really popular in the fly community. There's a lot of the Euro nymphing, high stick nymphing, and fluorocarbon being able to kind of cut through, being a little denser, sinking a little better than monofilament. So fluorocarbon's really big in the industry. As far as leaders go, most of your fly leaders are monofilament. But when you get to your tippet portion of the leader, the portion that the fly is attached to, a lot of times guys are cutting that and switching it off to fluorocarbon, using a blood knot or a surgeon's knot, and adding fluorocarbon on the end of their leaders so that they're presenting the flies better, They can go lighter and thinner and get the flies down easier with less weight on the fly. You get a better presentation. So there are, just like with conventional gear, there's little things you can do with better quality gear that definitely make you more effective. And there's a learning curve, like with anything. And fly fishing, just like conventional fishing, there's a lot of, for lack of a better word, there's a lot of genres. There's the dry fly guy who's casting 30 feet with a dry fly and wants to see that fish rise and eat the bug. There's the indicator nymph guys that are using a float to adjust the depth they're drifting their nymphs at. There's the pure Euro guys that are ticking the bottom with every drift. And, you know, fishing no indicator and really thin lines. And then there's the streamer guy who's, you know, chucking a 7-weight and throwing 5-inch bait fish for trout and smallmouth. And there's even the spay guys, the 2-hand fly rods that are swinging flies on long cast way downstream.
I promise, guys, this is something I want to do. Everyone keeps telling me I need to get more in covering the fly fish world in Virginia and Maryland. I'm going to do that. Lance Gray says, what is a good line? And to go with that, I'm going to say, what's a good beginner's line to get for your setup?
If you're looking for a good starter line, look in the $50 to $70 price range. Cortland, Rio, Scientific Anglers, all have good lines in that $50 to $70 range. They're not going to have the top-end features, the slickest coatings or anything like that, but they're good, dependable lines in that $50 to $70 range. If you get below that $50 range on a fly line, they've got to cut some corners manufacturing that coated line to get it that cheap. And it's probably, it may hold up okay for a guy that's fishing 5 times a year, but a guy that's fishing every week, he's not going to get any life out of that $40 or $30 or $40 fly line. He might get 3 or 4 months out of it.
There you have it. And then, guys, of course, you can get all this stuff that you need for your first fly fishing or your seasoned fly fishing expert. You can get all your stuff from your shop. And that kind of segues into, did you always want to tackle shop? How did this happen?
I kind of have. So I've worked at a fly shop, a small wintergreen resort. We had a little fly shop there back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I worked at that shop, 18, 19, 20 years old for a couple of years. And I knew then I wanted to do something like that at some point in my life. I didn't have the ability to do that starting out. Had to work 20 years in other industries to get to that point, but yeah, I wanted a fly shop from the time I first worked in one.
And then when did you, I guess, break ground, or when was your first year with the tackle shop you're with now?
Actually, putting a shop in place was 2011.
Wow.
I guided part-time. I had a business license and had flies for people and did that all throughout since I was a teenager. But actually opening the doors on a retail space and having an official guide service was, with multiple guides, was 2011.
That's crazy. Is that over 10 years?
Yes,
Sorry, guys, I'm mathing this.
Yeah, we're coming up on April 13th will be 14 years.
14 years. Oh my God, dude, that's insane.
And we currently have 3 or 4 guides beyond me and on the staff. We're usually running 3 to 5 trips a week. We're not booked solid or anything like that most of the time. There are times, peak season in April, May, I may not have a day available.
Wow.
I may have everybody tied up, but I don't want a huge guide staff. I want my guys to have years of experience, both fly fishing and knowing the rivers they're fishing. And there's guys out there that are great fly fishermen that are ready to guide, but they don't know the rivers here that well. And there's guys that knows the rivers here really well, and they're great fly fishermen, but there's a personality involved in guiding as well.
Yeah, there is.
So you have to have a little bit of everything. You have to have you have to have extensive local knowledge of the streams you're going to be on. extensive, 5 to 10 years experience on those streams. You should be at least 5 to 10 years of experience fly fishing. There's guys that are out there guiding right now that started fly fishing 3 years ago. I see them, and they're not doing their clients a good service, in my opinion. Now, that's my opinion. Some of them have good days. They don't always have good days.
It is interesting because when I have friends and guys that come on the show, that's all they do is they just guide themselves, and so they're putting 200 to 300 days on the water.
Yeah.
And they physically, I can tell, like when I have them on the show during the season, they look ragged. They're worn out. It's insane. And when you're in your situation, you are now more of almost a business manager too. Of course, you get out when you can, but you also now you do have more of the desk type-ish job.
Absolutely.
Was that a harder transition for you?
No, because I've gotten older, and I get tired faster. I don't want to run 4 floats a week. I physically hurt when I do that. There is a point you have to look at yourself and go, if I'm physically hurting, I'm not going to give that next guy a good day.
Yeah, that's a good point. Great point.
If it's physically wearing me down, I'm not going to be giving those people that are paying me a good service. So it's our, kind of our business model is spread the work out, do a good job for every client you take on the water. And if you're 4 days deep running 10-hour floats, dragging the raft home every night and cleaning it up and getting gear ready for 2 hours and then going back tomorrow and doing it again, you're at the end of 3 or 4 days, you're not giving that next guy a good day.
No, true that. The last thing I wanted to talk about was, what is the stance in the community about brown trout? Because I know certain states they grit their teeth about it because they're technically an invasive species.
Absolutely.
In theory, but they are fun as hell. They get big and they can thrive in places that brookies and other species just can't.
Brown trout are loved and hated.
Yeah.
And that's throughout the United States. They have done a good job of filling the niche that we wiped brook trout out of, and we will probably never see brook trout come back in Waynesboro.
Wow.
We would have to do 40 miles of stream restoration.
Really?
Reforesting, silt loads, the whole 9 yards to see the South River have a shot at a reproducing brook trout population. Agriculture in the valley, it's a valley floor stream. This valley's been used for agriculture since the 1700s. Agriculture loosens the soil. We have erosion issues. We have deforestation issues. Widening channels, and that's going to elevate water temperatures, and all the things that go with that we would have to correct. Brown trout can fall into that niche and survive and even thrive, where the brook trout just simply cannot because of their temperature tolerance and their silt tolerance. Brook trout cannot tolerate any silt.
I didn't know
your
that.
native brook trout, that's why they're living up high on the mountain, is it's gravel and rock. There's very little silt.
Is it easier for you, though, as a company to promote, out of curiosity, to promote catching a brook trout that's this big or a brown trout? I mean, it's almost like like sports cars. Is there a more sex appeal to catching a bigger brown versus a brookie?
There is. There's an appeal to different people for both of those, though. A 7-inch, 6 or 7 inch native brook trout, that's a 3 or 4 year old fish.
Wow.
A brook trout rarely live past 5. That's a mature fish. It's ready it can spawn. It can procreate. That 6, 7 inch brook trout is an adult fish, and it's a beautiful fish. You look at a native brookie compared to one from the hatchery, and it's like you're looking at 2 different species. I mean, it's so vibrant, So there's people that love that. They love the appeal of the high country, the back country. They love that beautiful little small trout that blasts the dry fly off the surface like it's never seen one before. You know, they're living in fairly sterile environments. They don't pass up a whole lot of food. And then you've got the guys that are looking for the bigger fish. The guy that loves big fish is not going to make a good brook trout fisherman. He's never going to love it. The guy that loves beautiful wild fish in Virginia doesn't have a whole lot of opportunities for brown trout. There's only a few places in Virginia that have good populations of wild brown trout. As you go north into PA, West Virginia, a little bit higher elevations, a little bit colder climates, you get more wild browns. We've only got a few streams that have wild browns in Virginia.
Interesting.
So most of your brown trout fishing in Virginia is stocked or holdover stocked browns. Now you got the Jackson tailwater. There's 18, 20-inch wild browns there. You got the Smith tailwater in Bassett. There's a lot of 12-inch wild browns there. There's occasionally a bigger one. And you've got a few mountain streams in Southwest Virginia and in the Blue Ridge that have small wild browns with the rare dinosaur big brown. And I'm talking rare dinosaur. You know, once every 5 or 10 years, somebody catches an 18-inch brown out of one of these little tiny creeks that has wild browns.
That's cool. That's really cool. And guys, I got last question, so Tommy can get back to his booth. Lance, and I think you already answered this, but where is a good place to catch a nice brown, so a big brown trout in Virginia? So
optimally, you'd be looking at the Jackson tailwater. There are some big browns in Lake Moomaw that occasionally run up the Jackson above Lake Moomaw up into like Hidden Valley, the National Forest. So there are some big stocked browns in Lake Moomaw that occasionally do wander upstream up the river. That's like hunting dinosaur eggs. They're there. Whether you'll find one or not, it's a strong no most of the time. But the Jackson tailwater, if you're looking for that wild fish that's over 15 inches, there's a good chance there. But if you're looking for a 2-foot-long brown trout, Virginia's not your state. Mm-hmm. Occasionally it happens down Southwest Virginia, White Top. You know, lower down on the White Top, you might find a fish that size. South Holston, above Holston Reservoir, you might find one that size. But you're going to find more of that 16 to 20-inch class wild brown in Virginia if you're looking for bigger browns. That 16 to 20 class is what you're going to find. There are dinosaurs. There are big fish out there, but they're pretty rare. If you want to target that wild brown, go to the Jackson tailwater, go to the Smith tailwater. Find those few places like White Top or South Holston that has a decent wild brown population that are a little bit bigger streams. Because you got to have a food base to grow that fish that big. You know, if there's limited food, that fish is going to be limited size. So these little creeks that are 10 feet wide just don't have enough food in them to grow a 20-inch brown.
There you have it, guys. Tommy, if people want to come shop at your store, book a guide trip with you, just let everyone know at home where they can do that.
So we are located in downtown Waynesboro. We're at 323 West Main Street. We are about a block from the Main Street Bridge over the South River. It's within sight of the front door of the shop. So there's the catch and release area there on the South River. We're right in the middle of it. You can find us online at southriverflyshop.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook in the same South River Fly Shop. And, you know, reach us pretty much any way there, messenger, email, phone. Yeah, we're open 9 to 5, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, and we're open noon to 4 on Sundays. So we're pretty easy to catch up with.
Right on. Guys, go check him out. As always, on the re-upload, I'll put a link in the episode description to all of his social media, his website, so you can go check him out. The South River, another one of Virginia's hidden gems. We're going to take a quick commercial break here, and then we're going to have our next guest. We are live from the Augusta County Fishing
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here, because I don't expect anything, because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
1951, famous company. That dried up, and I reached out to David Barclay, who's the owner of Douglas Outdoors, and I was like, hey, I'm doing exactly what you're looking for in the music industry. I'm going to all these trade shows. I'm playing everywhere. I have all this experience. I love bass fishing. Here's this website I just started. Here's all my YouTube videos. Like, not like I have like a massive following, but I had a small following and was well respected in my area of New Jersey, where I'm from and where I grew up. And we went back and forth for like probably 6 months, and I ended up taking this gig, and now I've been here for like a year and a half, and it's been pretty crazy. So
How did you go from a 3-sport athlete to music school to being a rock star?
Dude, I have crazy drive, man. I love when I get into something, I have like hyper focus, and I just put everything, it's all or nothing. That's pretty much the motto I live by. So yeah, I don't know. If I have an interest, like if you saw my gear collection on the music side, you'd be like, you're out of your mind. And then if you saw my fishing, gear collection, and I fish a lot of swim baits, and I was doing it before it got massive too. So like I kind of was always into like doing something a little bit different to try to stand out and really try to catch massive bass, because like when I was lucky enough to catch a 7-pounder in the Northeast when I was 16, and I didn't even know fish could get, or a largemouth could get that big. And it sent me on this wild quest of research, and I would just look at all these weird techniques of how I could like maximize my potential to try to catch a fish of that size again. So it led me into this swim bait hole, and then I've been really dedicated on that for like the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. But now it's massive, so now I'm like, what am I gonna do?
So, and then you decided to go to music school. To what were you hoping? Like, what was the thought there? Because you went from that to becoming a touring professional. That's
well,
crazy.
I still do it.
Oh, you still do it?
Yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
I still play all over the place. Like I play with this kid Jesse Kinch that won Rising Star, one of those TV shows, and we opened up for Little Big Town. We played Salinas in this stadium for 17,000 people last summer. But I do a lot of hired gun gigs too. I play with this dueling piano company called Savage Pianos. We play all these.
Holy crap!
We play these corporate events. So I do a lot of fly dates. That's why I can still do this. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know. I just try to live off my passions, and I've been lucky enough to do it just through hard work and dedication. And I went to music school, and right after that, I played on a cruise ship for.
Really?
Yeah. Holland America, Veendam and Westerdam. This is a crazy story. I told you this is a nutty story.
How long did you live on Did you live on a cruise ship basically?
It was the weirdest time of my life. Yeah, for a year.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
It was bizarre.
Where did you go again?
The first contract I did was 4 months, and I did all over Alaska. So I got to check out like Ketchikan and Sitka, Juneau, and then I did Central and South America. So I did like Guatemala, Honduras. We had a Key West stop. We did where else? There was somewhere else on there. I don't know. We did crossed over Panama Canal, and then they wanted me to do a world contract, but I was done with the cruise. It was too much.
That's claustrophobic too after a while.
Yeah, and everyone's in your business, and it's just too much.
And then from there, when did you get your first big, I guess, jump to like your touring, so to speak, across the country?
Well, I had a couple original bands that I played with. One of them called Boy Meets Machine. We had a song that blew up on MySpace in like 2008. So I got flown down to do this record showcase for Grand Hustle Records, which was T.I.'s record label. It's like a subdivision of Atlantic Records. We didn't end up getting a deal because I think the singer said some really stupid stuff in this showcase, but they loved us, so I don't know. We ended up doing we did some light touring after that, and then I had another band called Circuitry, and we toured up and down the East Coast, and I did that. That was all self-starter stuff, and then I started playing with other people like pop people and jazz fusion and even some country stuff, and that's how I'm in Nashville right now.
Okay, so, got you.
Yeah, I'm pretty versatile with my playing style. I'm really into like super technical guitar and really trying to learn every single style. And try to master it, but that never happens. There's always further that you can go.
It's like the pursuit of perfection. Like
Yes.
it's never attainable, but it's always pursuing.
Yes, like Victor Wooten, when I was at Berkeley, he gave this clinic. He's a real famous bass player, and he said something that was really poignant. He was like, when you first start, you have this like hubris that you play for a little bit and you're like, wow, I'm good, and then you realize you're not good, and it's the allegory of the cave, and then you're always trying to get out of that cave, and the light is like it's in your line of vision, but you can never really get to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much what I've experienced thus far. But I got a lot of friends that are killing it. Like at Berkeley, my guitar lab that I played in was Imagine Dragons, believe it or not.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not. They're obviously crushing it right now. But like the three guys, not the vocalist, but the drummer, the bassist, and the guitar player, and we played together for like 2 or 3 semesters, and that was not pop. That was all jazz fusion, like crazy charts, like where everyone was playing like horn lines of like Miles Davis tunes on guitar, and it was really cool.
What genre challenges you the most as an artist?
Jazz.
Really?
Yes, 100%, because it's improv. If you don't like study jazz, it's hard to explain, but there's so many. It's so free, yet there are so many rules. Like for a specific chord, you'll have to play a certain scale over that to really outline it. And it's moving so fast that to think about that spontaneously and to have the technique to be able to pull that off, that is the hardest thing by far. So I'm always working on improvisation. Like if I'm practicing, if I'm playing obviously like a set of tunes, like last week in Nashville, I had to learn like 100 tunes to brush up for this one gig that I was playing on Broadway. And that's brutal because it's just like, you're sitting there and you're like, oh. But like, if you're really working on improvisation, that's a totally different skill set.
You're pursuing a craft that is so all-encompassing, and you can really spend a life dedicated to the pursuit of it. And with that, how did fishing, while you're living this crazy life that so many people dream of, how did fishing work its way in?
Okay, so fishing is, I think it's amazing for musicians, and I've gotten a lot of my musician friends into it because it allows you to escape. For most people, I guess. I mean, maybe I'm so obsessive compulsive and so into it that maybe it's not the right thing for me because, I have all this drive in music, and I have that same drive in fishing. Like I'm always trying to catch like the biggest bass or to improve my technique. But really, if you simplify it, you're out in nature, you're immersing yourself in nature, you're unplugging from reality to a certain degree. I mean, I wear a GoPro, so I guess I'm not getting rid of technology, but I try not to look at my cell phone, or unless I'm taking a picture of a fish that I caught. I have a whole setup, but you're out there, and it's really the pursuit of it's like a game of chess, but in real life versus what I think is somewhat of an intelligent creature that can discern if you make a mistake. Sometimes these largemouth bass, if the presentation's not right or the angle's not right, if you're gliding something and you pull it out too far and it doesn't look natural, those fish will follow it all the way back and they will never strike. So to me, it allows me an outlet to escape, I guess, the hustle and bustle of like those late nights and the travel, and just enjoy, nature and immerse yourself in some sunlight or even some rain and just experience just a different sensory load,
Was it a time frame, or was it a moment where it slowly became more important to your life that there was a business opportunity or a job opportunity to get in the fishing industry? How did that all take place?
That took place because I saw, I remember I was at the biggest trade show in fishing, in music is NAMM. So that takes place in Anaheim, California. It's massive. Absolutely crazy. Like you have like all these huge artists that are walking around, and then every vendor. So I've always kind of, I guess, mixed that like product and technology with actual performance and like, interfacing with people in a real life scenario. I've had that skill set forever. But But I saw that during the pandemic. I saw it dwindling, and I saw the music industry like dying out, like literally dying out, and the whole thing with Spotify and you know, artists not getting the cut that they deserve. It's really tough to it's tough to make money, and I saw a shift to the outdoors during the pandemic, and I'm like, what if I give this a try? You know, what if I do this, have basically my same skill set? I'm knowledgeable in all of, because I'm so, again, OCD, and like I follow all these, I get into the nitty gritty of details on the fishing side. Like I have such a good product knowledge of what's out there. Maybe I can be successful at this and give it a try. And it's been like, there's so many parallels between the music industry and the fishing industry.
Really?
Absolutely. The travel, like even just from hanging out with Kyle Patrick and Martin Villa, one of our, you know, two of our biggest pros. The fact that they are on the road all the time, they're spending money on gas, they're living out of gas station food, and, you know, trying to stay healthy on the road and not getting sleep. That's touring in the music industry. And honestly, in some regards, I think like the way that the touring like fishing industry is, or, you know, the Bass Pro Tour is set up and Elite Series, there's not a lot of promise of reward. Like it's worse than the music industry, like actually. So, I mean, I think just, and there's also such an artistic aspect of fishing as well. Like think about how discerning some of these guys are about lures. Like if you look right over here and you see all this megabass display, and, you know, and even the first thing that caught my eye when I was walking past this booth right here is they have a Z-Man jackhammer in Morning Dawn, and I hadn't seen that color, and it's paired now with a Seiko that's also Morning Dawn color. Like that's art. I mean, that's something that fish haven't seen before, and you're always trying to, you know, based on your skill set, your knowledge, and your time on the water, you know what works and what doesn't for you. And I think that fishing is super personal, and there's no set rules for fishing, and there's no set rules for you as an artist when you're creating, you know, in music. Like that's your personality coming out. So I do believe there's a ton of like crossover.
And so in your head at this point in your life, you're like, I want to get into the business side of things with fishing. So did you just start knocking on companies' doors and saying like, hey, hire me? Like how did those opportunities
That's a good
start?
question. So I literally emailed one person, and I have a good resume, you know, and I don't know, I know how to write, I guess, but it sounds so arrogant, but I was a big fan of Oliver Nye, who was basically repping this company, Douglas, that I never heard of before. And I was like, what is with these rods? And I started looking, you know, I went down a rabbit hole, and I saw that they had so many technique specific and so many odd models of rods that I had never like really come across before. I guess the closest would be maybe like the Dobbins line, how they have so many different technique specific rods that are super specialized. And I saw like just from a swim bait standpoint, like the 784 that we have, like this, it's a 7'8" a 4-power for us is medium power fast action rod that can handle up to 2.5 ounces. And I was like, what? Like that's such a crazy rod. And it's like, you know, it's one piece grip. And that I started, when I got to the company, I picked it up and I'm like, this is a perfect tiny clash rod. And all DRT Tiny Clash is like a really popular smaller swim bait. It's modular, Japanese company. You can take the bill out. You can do this thing called a dead walk, which is like an underwater walk. If you're by structure, it has the you know, the head down, and it really entices these fish to bite. A lot of fish hadn't seen that. And I picked up this rod and I'm like, no one would ever know this, but this is the perfect rod for this. And people try to make the perfect rod for that, and I think like we actually make it. And there's like just weird rods in the lineup. Like we have a 765 that can handle up to 3 ounces that you can like it's light enough to frog with, but you can also throw a glide bait, like a 3 ounce or a 3 ounce rat. It's a great rat rod. And just to have that level of like attention to detail, like the rod designer, Fred Contawi, who came up with this, like, he's almost like Howard Rourke from the Fountainhead. He came up with all these just crazy rod models that are, I don't even know if they make business sense if you don't know how to interpret the rod, but they're like from an artistic standpoint. And now, you know, they're genius. But now that I've been trying to break it down for the general public, like now people are starting to realize, like, wow, these are some really unique rods that you guys have.
How much do you balance? Because I feel like sometimes when you're doing this business side of things, it's like trying to sell music you haven't played before. So how do you balance being able to get out and try to use some of the equipment and everything while you're driving all over God's earth?
Well, that's also really hard. I try to link up with pros and like plan one day in advance. And like, for instance, like coming down here with Martin, we got a chance just for a few hours to fish Lake Anna, you know, and he was, you know, working on his scoping stuff. And I just got to, you know, you can go over some certain rods and get out there and test things and just try to get out with a pro, which is great. I mean, why not utilize some of these pros, get some content with them? You know, you got to touch people in this business. It's a personalized business. So is it easy to do that? No. I mean, my life is pretty much music and this. I'm always on the road. I spent the entire month on the road.
God damn.
Like between gigs and this, I've been at 3 different, I was at the Maine Long Lake Ice Fishing Derby all the way up in St. Agatha, Maine. I was at the New England Fishing Expo. I was here, or I am here. Am I here? I don't. That's like a metaphysical question. And then in between that, I did gigs in Connecticut, and I tried to plan this right. Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, and I feel like I did one more. And Maine. I played Maine. We played the opening night of that ice fishing derby, which is nuts.
Are you flying or driving for most of this?
I've been flying more.
Okay, thank God.
I've been flying more. Last year, I spent like the whole year on the road driving around one of those vans for the most part, and I was able to do it, but it took its toll. So now that I'm in Nashville, I usually meet Carter, our rod designer now, who does everything, who's like a Swiss Army knife of an employee, phenomenal guy over there. He drives from New York, and I'll meet him somewhere. Like, for instance, we did the Novi show in Michigan. I forgot about that. I flew in. He picked me up in the van. We stayed at our pro, Scott Dobson's house up in Michigan. And then we did that show for 4 days, and I flew back to Nashville, played a show that night, and then got on the road again to do that whole leg. So it's hard. It's not easy. But you got to make sacrifices. I hate office job stuff.
I can tell.
I can't do it, dude. No.
What do you think of the evolution of the swim bait culture and how that's blowing up?
I think it's on the decline, unfortunately. I think it's blown up. And here's a perfect example. I was just at this, I think it's great what's happening, and everybody's making swim baits now. But that doesn't mean that every swim bait is good. You know what I'm saying? So like there's so much volume at this point that it becomes, if I was a new swim bait angler, I'd be scared because it's hard to know what to spend money on and what not to spend money on. And everyone's trying to sell you, you know, just because you're a cottage bait maker and you make a bait in your garage doesn't mean it's good. Like, again, you have to search that out. And also, like, a bait that works for one guy won't work for someone else. You have to find your own personalized style. But I was at the New England Fishing Expo, which now, since they don't do the New England Swim Bait Expo anymore, that's like the biggest swim bait presentation in the Northeast. Like, it's mostly swim baits. Or at least half swim baits. Like, there's some great makers there, like Golden Belt Customs, and Swim Bait Universe has a booth there. And they're, you know, we were right next to Victor Depp, who does Fish Everything, like really great glide baits. And I think it's great that it's readily available, but I also think that people are becoming inundated with it, and they're realizing, like, I think like 2 years ago, people thought that if they threw a big bait, they were like, okay, I'm going to throw this on and I'm going to go out and catch a giant. And then they realize they have to do work, and most days you're not catching a fish. You might raise it. It's almost like musky fishing. Like, you'll raise a few bass, but to get them to bite is a totally different story. And I think now that all these bass have seen like glide baits all over the place, they're even more wary. It's like the scope thing on the other side. Like, now all these fish are getting completely conditioned to scoping. Like, what's next? I mean, even fishing Anna, I know it's cold still, but like if we didn't drop a minnow right on their head, and I threw glide bait, I don't care. I threw glide baits the whole day. I thought I was gonna maybe catch like a pre-spawn giant. It just was too cold. The water temp was too cold. When it's like still 40, it's you know. And I was throwing soft swim baits too, but that bite wasn't on. But it's the same thing. Like you have, what are we doing with bass fishing? We're conditioning these fish to pretty much everything, big, small, technology. Like now all these fish are becoming pelagic. They're not sitting in the normal spots that you normally target them at because they're scared. And I think they're pressured all year round. There's no time off. So I think I just shifted to a different topic, but
No, go for it, man. That's cool.
I think it's scary. I think the sport is in danger.
Yeah, why do you think it's in danger?
I think for several reasons. I think these corporate conglomerates are a disaster where these companies are becoming too big for their britches. Like the amount of people that we have taken over from like pros from like companies like Dobbins because nobody knows how to get in touch with like customer service there, or they're not happy with like the warranty process, and we're small enough to be able to field those people. I mean, if you look at Pure Fishing, look at all the cuts they made. I think that's bad. I think there's not enough payout to these pros, and I think the whole scoping thing has made it kind of a rich man's sport, and that's why you don't necessarily have to understand the fundamentals anymore. You can be just like a young kid and be really good at scoping, and I am not knocking that because that is a skill set. Like it's an incredible thing to be a good scoper, but because it's so effective right now, you can gloss over some of the core foundation pieces of bass fishing. And that's why I respect our pro Kyle Patrick so much, because he can scope, but he just fishes like 4 techniques. He's a jig guy. He throws a shaky head. He power shots. And if he has to, he'll punch, and I'll throw a jerk bait. But he's so good at these old school bass fishing techniques that if he doesn't have to scope, if he can go fish shallow, or if he can go, fish a bite where he doesn't have to do that, he can do it, and he can win all over the place. And I just watched his seminar, and just even some of the little things he was saying about not moving the rod tip and reeling a jig up off the bottom to get it to really look like, instead of pulling it out of the strike zone, like these fundamental things I think are being lost. And so I think like the wrong people in the industry, it's become too much of a business thing and less of rewarding the pros. Like they're making, it's scary to live on the road, like for these guys. Again, like I think it's worse than the music industry.
Why do you think the private equity firms have been so entrenched now in the fishing industry and also in the music industry now?
Because they'll do anything to make money, and they see the passion. And look, I don't know the number, but like bass fishing is massive. Like that's millions of people that are into it across the country. And it doesn't have to be a tournament pro. It can just be someone that's like going to Dick's, picking up a rod and fishing on the weekend. And it's the same thing with music. It's become, you don't have to go to a studio anymore. You can do everything in your bedroom. And look at like TikTok has blown up people. I mean, that are doing, look at Billie Eilish. I mean, she was doing all these recordings with her brother Phineas, like in her bedroom.
And this is more of a music industry question, but is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because I could possibly make an argument it's a good thing that you no longer have gatekeepers. If your shit's good, you can upload it to YouTube and north of Richmond, and you can get a deal doing that.
Yeah,
it's not one person saying like, I just don't like you, therefore you're not good.
I think it's a good thing, but I also think it's a two-headed beast because you have so much option paralysis. I think it's very hard for you could be an unbelievable artist right now. Like you could be insane, but sticking out and trying to win the algorithm is really tough. There might be 10 Billie Eilishes that we'll never hear. You know what I'm saying? And it's like striking gold. I hate to say it, but like, there's so many artists now, and it's so accessible. And I think it's the same thing with fishing. Look at all these YouTube guys. Everybody's a YouTuber. I mean, like I run into people and they're like, oh, I got this. These are my numbers. I'm like, okay. like, that might be good, that might be bad. And I think it's great that you're out there doing what you love, but like just because you're putting up content doesn't mean it's good content. Just because you're putting out music and it's popular, does it mean it's good? That's all subjective. So I think that's like that's a moral question.
It is, because it's like, does it matter if it's good as long as it's popular? Like, does it matter? Does it matter if it's good if you're not famous? Because you can be famous, and that feels like sometimes it's more important than whether there's anything behind it, because that pays bills. People will come see you.
That's something that I wrestle with all the time. I think that's a really tough question. I think if you're a pure artist and if you really are doing it for the artistry and you believe in it, I think no, the answer is no. But I think, again, like, it's really hard when you don't think about it. Like in Renaissance times, like wealthy patrons respected the arts and they would pay you for your artistry. Like now you have to basically figure out how to be your own businessman, or business person. And I think that's also daunting because that takes away from the creative process. You're spending time doing that and trying to, get the right lighting make sure your ring is behind you and you're facing the right direction and you don't have direct sunlight bleeding into your video, or what is the gimmick going to be for this next thing that's going to be viral. I think that's, and is that art? Is making a viral video art? Like, I don't even look at social media anymore because it's like the slot machine syndrome. You just see these lights, man.
Yeah, because to me, I think that's fascinating what is considered good is also, I guess, based on who's willing to pay you. And so I think the biggest issue is from a purely objective art standpoint, you could be like, well, this music is actually good, but does it make money? And then this here, you could have that same music enthusiast be like, well, this is not really good, but they sell out. Therefore, does that mean they are the winner and they're doing the right thing? Even though they might be creating crap, they sell tickets.
Well, from a financial standpoint, I mean, again, like this is
it's an interesting conversation because it's in the fishing industry too. It's like this guy doesn't win a tournament, but he's famous for whatever he does. Therefore, is he actually objectively correct versus the guy that maybe knows what he's doing, he does this and this, but he's not famous? And it's funny because like I think we have to separate out what sells and then what is good. I don't know. That's hard to answer.
That's an impossible question. I mean, look at Taylor Swift.
Oh God. Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, that's the best example of this because like if you analyze from a theoretical standpoint, her tunes are 1-6-2-5 or 1-6-4-5, like very basic progressions, really good production. But like, is she like a virtuoso musician? I'm gonna flat out say no, she's not. Does she write good songs? You could argue. I mean, you could have whatever.
What is good? What makes money, or like what is legitimately like a good song?
I mean, honestly, some of the songs are good. It's good songwriting. I mean, you cannot argue that. Like some of these songs that get massive like that, it's for a reason. Like she's become an architect of a very specific style, and I mean, that's one of the most successful artists of all time. Like you can't debate that, but like, would I listen to it or do I want to listen to it? No, but would I want to go play for Taylor Swift? Yeah, it's probably fun as heck. Go play for stadiums like that, and playing with a great band, and like she has everything at her fingertips and has a great, she treats her people well, and like, I mean, there's something to say for that too. So I don't think there's a right or wrong here. I think it's just perspective. I mean, this is just a moral dilemma.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with fishing too.
Yeah, it is.
But I do think that something's got to change with the dough that they're allotting to these guys that are out there killing. The fact, like, I think things will change. I think they're gonna have to change because like, who is gonna be able to afford to like fish? Like, you're gonna only have you're gonna have to come from money. That's where it's headed, and like people are pissed about that.
Yeah,
I think.
And it's sad because I think that's in every industry where it's becoming more and more. Even Swift, I think her father gave her like $300,000 for her first label or something like that.
He bought $100,000 worth of her records to put her on the map.
There you go. I mean, that's a you
It's
need
payola.
you need to come from a certain class to have that kind of effect. And yeah, I mean, it's not football in that sense where you could be living in the ghetto, but you run a 4.4 and you're going to get found. I mean, that stuff, and maybe that's why we look at athleticism like that in such an interesting class. I don't know, dude. This has been a great conversation. If people wanted to, well, let's just do what is your swim bait setup, and then let's get into kind of like what you guys got going on rod wise.
Okay, so I fish with a Douglas. You know, I fish 5 different swim bait setups with Douglas. So I fish are all from the X Matrix series. So I fish a DXC 765F. That is a 3/4 ounce rod to a 3 ounce rod. That's what I throw my rats on, smaller glides. You can also throw softer, small soft swim baits. That DXC 784F, that is a 2.5 ounce rod. That's what I throw my TK on. I like throwing like a Chad Shad on that as well. And then I throw like the big 3 swim bait rods, and it's really cool because they're detachable handle. They're like JDM style rods.
Oh, cool.
So they ferrule at the handle. So really, it's technically once you're in there, it's a one-piece rod, but it just saves on like rod locker. You know, you can break it down if you have to. I don't break mine down. I just keep them and throw them in the van. But they have, you know, the correct handle length. They have 17, 18-inch handles, like somewhere in there. I think 17 and a half. Right handle length, I fish the DXC 711 6F. That's a 2 to 6 ounce rod. I throw both glides and soft baits. It's a multi-loading blank, so it's parabolic, so you can get away with both of those. It's been phenomenal. Lately I've been throwing a Golden Belt Customs scythe on that. It's like a big shad profile glide bait. I throw the DXC 805F. That is a 3 to 7 ounce rod that has the tapered handle, which is really comfortable. It almost feels like you're throwing a conventional rod. That's a great, I think if I was to get one swim bait setup that can cover like pretty much everything, because that'll still throw a depth 250. It's a little bit overloaded throwing a 6 ounce bait, but it'll throw it all day. I've done it in a pinch. That one's great. I'm throwing like a Johan 9-inch shine glide on that. I was throwing a triple trout at Lake Anna on it yesterday, 8-inch triple trout. And then I throw our Big Bertha, the Douglas DXC 807FD, another detachable. So those last 3 are all detachable. That's 711 and both 8-foot rods, detachable handles. And that one will throw 6 to 14 ounces. So if you want to throw a depth 250 like it's a Senko all day long, that's the rod. It just bombs it out there. It's got a nice, moderate, fast taper. Again, multi-loading blank, parabolic with a fish on. It'll keep trebles pinned, but you can also like throw, you know, a 10-inch mag draft on that, and you know, big soft swim bait, and it handles it great. It'll throw like I'll throw a DRT Ghost on that, Clash Ghost, which is a big 8.5 or 9 ounce, depending on how you rig it, giant swim bait, and it'll throw that big stuff pretty good. So, you know, I've been lucky enough to go and test these things and really put them to their paces. And we've got a lot of content on Douglas and me catching pretty giant fish, you know, big Northeast smallmouth and largemouth on these rods, and they've handled great. I think I've only dumped one big fish on it on the St. Lawrence. I had a giant ratfish on it, just jumped a second time. I was actually with Martin. He was freaking out. He couldn't believe that. He's like, dude, you don't need to throw big stuff here to catch that. But like, that's cool that you got it hooked up, you know?
That's really awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Is there any other rods that you guys are really trying to promote right now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, all 3 of our lineups are pretty killer. Our Arrow lineup, that's our entry level. The ERAs, there's 2 spinning models and 4 casting models in there. That covers pretty much, I would say, 99% of conventional bass fishing. Like the Era, the frog jig rod there, it'll throw up to 2 ounces. Like you could throw like a mag draft 6-inch, even like jig hook, you know, weedless on that, and it'll stick them. But it's super light. So that's a $99 rod, and we got a show special on it here. But like that thing, we sold out of them the first run of them because they were so popular, and they're competing with like a Dobbins Fury, and I think ours balance a little bit better. Dobbins Fury is a great rod lineup, no questions asked, but I think ours balance a little bit better, just from testing it for the whole year. Our mid lineup is called the LRS Lake River Sea Fuji Phase Light guides. Really popular with our guides. They're blue. You either like that or you hate that. They're durable. They're a little bit heavier than the X Matrix, but top end components. Great. Same thing. Multi-loading blanks, parabolic. So many different technique specific rods across the lineup. And then honestly, the X Matrix is the crown jewel of Douglas. Like, I don't think enough people understand what it is, but it's basically like getting a Loomis NRX style rod at or feel at half of the price point. I mean, it really is that light, that balance. Fuji Alkanite guides, Fuji reel seat, incredible, just very exquisite tapers across the lineup. And if there's a technique that you want to do, you can find it in there. So, I mean, it's a complete rod lineup, no doubt.
Awesome stuff. Guys, go check them out. Where are you going to be next, and when's your next gig you're playing?
Let's see. Next gig I'm playing, I believe, is in Brooklyn, New York. And that's this weekend. And then let's see. We will be at the Michigan, what is that show called? Grand Rapids show. That's
Grand
our
Rapids.
next show. So we'll be there in March. Might do one in Connecticut with Slay Nation the week before. Slay Nation's up there too. But you can check us out at douglasoutdoors.com. You can check out, if you want to hear some music, you can check out Christian Colabelli. That's my guitar Instagram. If you want to see some big swim bait fish, bigfishsynergy.com or on Instagram, and christiancolabelli.com too.
There you have it, guys. We're going to be taking a quick 8-minute break so I can go take a leak, and we'll
Me
bring
too.
on our next guest. Again, go check them out, guys, and we'll be back in about
Hey everyone, quick little announcement here from Fishing the DMV. Our Weekend Warrior membership on Patreon is nearly full. There are only 28 spots still available. Once these spots are gone, they're gone, and the Weekend Warrior tier will be closed to the general public. All members will be locked in indefinitely at a fantastic price point, and they will get all the benefits that they have today, plus any new benefits and discounts that will be added in the future. All Weekend Warriors will receive 5% off their orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off their orders to Tiger Crankbaits, 10% off their orders to Catoctin Creek Rod. They'll also gain access to our private Facebook group community, loads of members-only content. And in 2025, there are going to be tournaments that will be given a massive discount specifically to our Weekend Warrior members. Plus, if you sign up for the year right now, you will get 8% off your already fantastically discounted rate to join the Weekend Warrior program. Link in the episode description. Thank you.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Aaron.
Finally died. We almost made it a whole weekend with good internet. I promise. On the list, once I get a couple more paying sponsors, we're going to get Starlink as backup so we can have that indefinitely for everything that we do. I am here with the man, the myth, the legend, Ricky Folk. Ricky, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing good. Just trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing this year. And, running a couple of these shows with Tiger crankbaits, and just enjoying it till it's time to start throwing them reels again.
I mean, what's nice, I guess, is you have a lot of options, right? The MPFL, the MLF, you got Bass. Like, have you ever thought about doing one of those other organizations?
Well, I've joined back up into Bass with Bass Nation again. In April, I'm fishing the James Nation qualifier to go to nationals, and then hopefully try to make it to the Classic. But we'll see how we go on the first tournament in April. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's a 250 vote max field. I don't think it's going to fill up, but the top 20 is the only ones that go to national. So it's on a good body of water. I know a lot about the James and the Chick, so I can probably call this my home, but still will be interesting because, it's April. I have a feeling it's going to be post-spawn fishing. I know the pits are going to play. I'm not a very big guy on the pits. I would much rather run the river, look for grass, look for what the fish are holding on, the pebble rock and all that stuff that holds the fish on the James at that time of the year. So I think a lot of things are going to play. A lot of things are going to play in that tournament.
What about the pits do you not like?
It's just, there's a lot of barges in there, a lot of dangerous stuff that can tear a boat up. I've just never been one. They get crowded. They get overly crowded because a lot of people like to fish the pits. The pits sometimes will withstand the pressure that they get, but with me, I would just much rather run the river and take my chances on running the tide of my previous history of only being on the James. I don't know yet if I'm going to make the run to the Chick, but I can tell you I'm going to make the run at least to Chippo. So I have plenty of time between now and the tournament to decide where I'm going to go. I'm probably not going to go above the Brickyard if I happen to go into the Chick, because I like the lower end of the Chick. There's some stuff down there you're not very familiar with. You're probably not going to try to get in some areas down there around Buzzards Flat and up some of them creeks heading towards the Brickyard.
Is that place the most, like, you gotta have the biggest home field advantage compared to the Potomac because there's so
boat if you're not exactly aware of how to get in some of these sneaky little holes down there, and even just running the James. I grew up in Ward's Creek. I've run that James a long time, and I missed the flat and cost me $5,200 to get my boat fixed. So you can miss a channel, or you can miss a ditch getting into an area, and you could either be sitting or you could be getting towed back. It's just that simple. The James is not a very friendly place to run. I don't take chances when I run it. You won't see me cut a flat. I'm going to run the buoys. I learned a long time ago, The only way you can fish is if you have your boat to fish, and you can't fish with it when it's in the shop.
This is facts.
But yeah, it's, you know, I know a lot of guys that'll cut that flat at the Appomattox. I'm going to run the channel. I'm not going to take a chance going across that flat. There's a lot of guys that know how to do it. I'm just not one of them. But there's a lot of little hairy creeks, though, that I know how to get in a whole lot better than a lot of other people do. Ward's Creek is a little snaky to get into. At one time, you used to have to come into the lower end. Now, the best way to get in it is the upper side. Kittawan is another creek that if you are off 10 feet one way or the other, you go run either on a barge or you go run on a flat. And Chip Oaks, you know, going into Chip Oaks is another one. You're just not going to just go flying into Chip Oaks if you don't know how to get in it. Especially right at the mouth. But that area down there, I'm going to say from the power lines to Chip Oaks, probably my favorite area to fish. Now there's some stuff in the Appomattox that I like to fish. But further back in the Appomattox, you better know how to run, because if you ever looked at it at low tide, it's bad. I mean, there is barges, there's rebar sticking up. I mean, a friend of mine that I learned on the opens, Brian Post, is from Wisconsin. He fished the open on James a couple years ago, and he didn't know he had a 3-foot hole in his boat till he got to the next place that he went to fish.
Good Lord.
Yep. He actually took off in an area and he ripped a hole in his boat, and he actually didn't know it till he went to this next open. But he must have done it either in the last hour or coming in and didn't notice, you know, the excessive water in his boat.
Jesus.
So, yeah, he told me about that, and that was kind of interesting.
I can't believe more people don't fish aluminums on that part of the river.
Yeah, but you know, there's not a whole lot of gas stations
True.
either. So
That's true.
the aluminum boats, I mean, you take a run from Osborne to Chip Oaks in an aluminum boat, you might not make it back.
I mean, does Keith Poche just have an extra gas tank? Because I think he fishes the river in that boat.
Yeah, but he went north.
Hey, okay, gotcha.
So he didn't go that far from Osborne. He probably didn't even burn a whole tank the whole week he was there.
Huh.
Because he went into, well, what they call the Waterfall Creek, which is above Jimmy Dean's. It's a little hairy getting in. And there's a waterfall back there, but I think they've now made that off limits.
Why?
Well, I think they have some ropes to help you get in and some trees you got to go across.
Good Lord.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird where they keep making things off limits because, I don't know, of access or I don't know. That's interesting. That's the one thing about the James is, like, there's a lot of places that you can probably get a boat into, but it's, like, illegal to actually fish it.
Yeah.
Way more than the Potomac.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, some of them barges, I mean, you know, they have gates that you can't get through, but there is some people that have keys to those gates. I have heard that they have gone into during tournaments, and then they were found out that they were in there and they disqualified them. But yeah, just like up in the Appomattox, there's one marina. It's not off limits, but the marina has no trespassing signs. But you know, Bass has never said you can't fish that marina. You know, it still is in the law books that, you know, you're not supposed to fish within 50 yards of a gas pump or 100 yards. So you got to watch that. It's some of the horseshoes on the James, especially that one marina back there.
I mean, speaking of bass, I mean, now that we've had so many years with the NPFL, Bass, and MLF, like, what do you think the state is with all three of those organizations? If you had to rank them like as a grade in school?
Well, I can understand what Bass did as far as the opens, but you know, I'm still not satisfied with their decision. You know, if you're going to cut coves out of something, I mean, okay, now you're having this big qualifier in Bass Nation, and now you're going to let coves in on that. You know, the guys that are signing up for it are trying to make it to the Nationals, to make it to the Classic. What's the difference? You know, the guys, they said, I don't think there was many guys complained about, you know, having coves in the open. The only thing I heard was, you know, you got to be sensible. Every time I fish with a pro in the opens, I gave the man at least $50. You know, I heard guys were, you know, giving them $10 and $20, you know, and to me, that's not right. I mean, at least give the man almost enough to give him a full tank of gas. Now, if you're fishing the St. Lawrence River and you're putting in at Waddington and you're going to run out to the lake, you know, do I think that's fair that the cove should have to, you know, help pay for that? No, because the cove has no decision in him running that far. So I really don't think it's fair, but still, you know, I think what they say, Corey Johnson spent
A shit ton.
a boatload of money of gas because he was, getting 2 tanks of gas.
Mm-hmm.
And I think each tank cost him $150 at that marina he was stopping at.
I guess the ethical question is, should we have professional co-anglers?
Well,
Or is it a gateway to becoming a boater?
yeah, well, that's it. You know, a guy's going to learn more from a pro than he is just a buddy or 2 buddies fishing together. You know, they're going to have a style of way of fishing. You know, that was the thing about fishing the opens. You know, these guys. Sure.
No, I mean, there are some insanely good anglers right now. But like you said, though, it just comes down to money. There's so much. It costs so freaking much to do it. How do you justify that to get a boat and actually start fishing that way?
Well, you know, take me, for instance. I was fishing the opens. You know, yeah, my entry fee was, you know, $475. But, you know, I was rooming with Logan Latuso and his dad, Robbie. And, you know, that trip still cost me close to $2,000, you know, because you have lodging, you got food, you got, you know, when you're riding with these guys, you know, you're going to give them gas money and stuff like that. So, you know, I was spending close to $1,500 to $2,000 on an open tournament.
Mm.
So, you know, and what you learn from that, going to all these different lakes, you know, it was my way of going to some of my bucket list places, you know, Okeechobee's, Santee Cooper, you know, Rayburn, Gunnersville, you know, Mississippi, and you know, where I won my tournament at. You know, being up on the St. Lawrence, learning stuff up there. I mean, and then the camaraderie of meeting these guys and becoming friends with them, and you know, I'm good friends with Brian Post. I'm good friends with I got to fish with Stephanie Hempel. Me and her are still good friends. Harvey Horn. I can name a bunch of the guys. I fished with Brett Height. Brett was a cool guy to fish with down on Santee Cooper, and just all the people you get to meet. I mean, I met Zach Groupmont, that's from New York, that's in the opens now and doing good. And we still talk, and I met Trey Swindle, G-Man's nephew. I mean, he's a nice guy. You just get to learn a lot of these guys and get their background and learn their style of fishing and how they attack the water. Because you can talk to them all day long, as you want. But, just like when I would ask them, I'd say, well, how did you pre-fish? How was your pre-fishing? And most of the guys pretty much told me, what they were doing when I called them, and that way it helped me out of knowing what to take, because, you don't want to sit down in their boat with 150 pounds of tackle and 7 rods. It gets, so I was able to, slim my stuff down and made myself more efficient. So.
Did you ever think about fishing the Toyotas then, since they still have a co-angler?
Well, I think my thing here from here on out, Thomas, is I need to make a decision whether I want to stay with the co or if I want to move to the front of the boat. I have the boat to do it. I have a 21-foot Triton TRX Elite, and it's fully equipped. I mean, I got everything on it, power poles, the graphs and everything. I'm ready to go. It's just a matter of whether I'm going to make that decision or if I'm just going to stay as a co-angler. Probably not. And see, I'm in with Frederick County Bass Club with the boys, and I enjoy that too. I mean, and Jared Mount, doing it with him, and I have a lot of fun doing that as well. So I just got to make that decision, and I'm probably leaning more towards being a boater. Start fishing some of these events. I might join the ABA and do some of that, see where I stand, for 1 year, maybe. And I even thought about joining back up with the Fishers of Men and just doing it by myself. Because, sometimes you want to see where you stand, with your local people, because they always say, if you can't be, I wouldn't say win everything, but, if you can't, how do I want to say this? Each given time of the year, if you can't break your local waters down and be competitive, then you probably ought to not venture out. But, I've always been one that was always good about finding fish. Especially with the high school kids. I mean, they're counting on you more so than you are them. They're looking for you to put them on fish. So, and I've done pretty well with that. I mean, my boys right now, I think, are sitting first in the Northern Division.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
And we have 2 teams, actually. I think we're sitting first, and I think there's another Frederick County team sitting second. And then Caleb Southerly and Logan Brown are sitting third. But we're all pretty close. But that's pretty good.
Is the biggest hang up for going and trying to take a crack at the apple as a boater money, or the fact that you're going to be having less time to spend with the high schoolers?
Well, I'm at an age in my life where money is probably not a big issue. I'm not saying I'm rich, and I'm not saying I'm loaded, but if I wanted to probably run a circuit and probably be a boater, I probably got to. I mean, I haven't spent a dime of my winnings from Mississippi.
Wow.
And it's still sitting in the bank. So, and with me having my own business, on the side of my 40-hour job, actually probably pretty much pays for all my fishing. I mean, it purchased my boat and paid my truck off. So
Why, from a purely cold logical view, it seems like the opens are insanely overcrowded, and you have and let's just play stats, whether you're playing poker or anything else. If you have a 10 boat tournament, you have a higher probability of doing well versus a 500 boat tournament. And when the field is so stacked in the opens, why not try an NPFL or a Toyota where maybe it's a little bit easier? I could get a couple of big wins nationally, get my name out there, versus just going straight to the opens with how many people are flooding there right now in 2025.
Yeah, and that's another thing I've looked at. I mean, the MPFL, I think. What are you looking at? $5,700 entry fees. Now that might be a little bit steep for me, but the Toyotas, BFLs. I would like to fish the BFLs, but what upsets me about the BFLs is what these guys are only getting paid back. And I think if I'm going to take the time and spend the money, and if you're fishing against 150 guys, I mean, the entry fees on the BFLs are what, $400?
$400. I mean, I wouldn't fish a BFL ever again. The Toyota series.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I personally, with my skill level, feel like I have a better chance of doing well in a Toyota than a Bass Open. And the check still clears if I win the Toyota, regardless of what I think of the organization. Then I guess it comes down to, like, does it just fish bodies of water I'm comfortable with? Like, they're going to the Potomac. I probably have a better chance there than freaking a Rayburn or a Santee Cooper from my history. So I guess there are factors like that to play in, like, the schedule and how it lines up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the opens are tough. I mean,
really tough.
Yeah. I mean, look at the level of guys that are coming back to it. I mean, I look at it even to look at some of the guys that have been in the opens, how they're even going to do against the guys even coming back. I mean, I don't know. The opens look like to me they might end up slapping themselves in the face.
Yeah, because again, guys, for people that are listening now or on the re-upload, it's like when you have the Big Bass Tour at Smith. At Smith Mountain Lake, they said they had like 550 boats that competed at the Big Bass Tour. At some point, the luck becomes a greater factor when you have so many competitors, and when you have such a stacked field on the opens. No matter how good you are, you have to have one of those perfect game pitching seasons to beat that field. But I don't know. It just seems like the Toyota series, maybe that is dying because nobody wants to fish that AAA system, and that's weird because 8-10 years ago, Toyota series was big time, just as popular as probably the Bass Opens.
Oh yeah. But to be honest with you, Thomas, I haven't looked at the schedule for the Toyotas, and I haven't looked at the schedule for the BFLs. Maybe I need to.
No, yes.
But I had a friend of mine that fished Smith. He finished second as a non-boater, and he got $1,400
for a BFL.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, BFLs are trash.
Yeah, I don't know where that money goes. I don't know. I mean, you add up the entry fee money, and you're like, wow, where'd all that money go?
Mm-hmm.
But that's way beyond my ability, my paycheck.
Well, and I guess it gets into, like, is it just to win money and do that, or is it about the cloud of going to the next level? Because an example is the Steve Camp's group, Elite 70s. I mean, they have pretty good payback. I mean, that's something where you could probably stay local and do well. But again, it's not just about the money when you do these things. I guess it's about getting to the next level, and maybe that's the biggest crime in the whole 3 breakup is there's no true AAA organization that pays well. Even the Bass Opens, it's not about winning money. It's about the golden ticket of making the elites. But you don't have a minor league AAA system of, like, a good organization that you can make some money on and kind of stay alive in.
Yeah, and that's just it. The way I look at it, and it's not so much the money or how much I'm going to win or whatever. It's where I want to see where my skill level is against these guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, I would love to fish. You know, I don't care if I fish against, you know, a Brett Hite or a Kevin Van Dam or, you know, Mike Iaconelli. You know, maybe those are the guys you want to fish with to see where your skill level is. You know, but then again, you know, you got to find a place somewhere to draw the line. But yeah, I just need to sit down and just, you know, with everything I got going on with the high school kids, you know, the enjoyment I get out of that, I just have to, you know, make a decision on what I'm going to do and whether I should probably go to the front of the boat, because that's what everybody tells me. They're like, Ricky, you at the wrong end of the boat. You need to go to the other end. I was like, what end's that? And they say, that's the front. You know, your skill level, you know, a lot of people say I underestimate myself, and I probably do. But I've been doing this stuff a long time. I probably ought to see where my skill level is.
No, I mean, you got to take the crack at the apple.
Yeah.
How does, and I just Googled to make sure I was correct, but how does the Tackle Warehouse Invitational work? Is it comparable to the Elites, the Opens? Like, because you have Toyota, Tackle Warehouse, and then you have the BPT. So what the hell is it? Where is it in the whole structure?
Well, yeah, as far as the invitationals, I mean, from what I've heard and did some reading on, there's not, you know, it looks like pretty much anybody can get in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to where before you had to fish your way into it, where now I think they're just doing whatever they can to fill the field, and whoever's got, you know, wants to get in them, they just get in them. I know Jeremy Sutherly fished them for 2 years, and now he's taking a break from it. But no, I think it would be better for me to probably start at maybe the Toyotas, maybe look at fish a couple BFLs, even though, you know, it ain't about the money because you're not going to get it there anyway, but at least see where my skill level is.
And this is another great question for anglers that wanting to make this jump, is fishing a single day event good for you when you want to fish an open level that's multi-day events? Is it good practice, or is it kind of a waste of money to only fish a one-dayer?
I think it's a waste, because I would much rather have the 2-day.
Okay.
Because at least in 2 days, you can see exactly where you stand, to where, like, if you have a cruddy day, then the next day you could come back with a big sack. That's why the single day, I think, the thing about me with a single day event, I think there's too much room for error, you know, where you make bad decisions, because that, and you get to fishing too fast on a one-day event. That's why I like what's going on down here with the Bass Nation qualifier. It's a 2-day event. And anybody knows the James, you can have a bad day, then you can come back and be a hero on day 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can weigh in 12 pounds and you can go back on day 2 and come in with 20. So,
I agree with that. It's weird because, like, everything in fishing is structured for a one-day event until it's time to make it a career, and then it's a 2, 3, 4 days. And I personally believe you have to retrain your brain, because what makes you successful in a 4-day event may or may not make you successful in a one-day event.
Yeah.
Just your whole thought process, your approach, and kind of the techniques you use.
Yeah, exactly. And when you throw tidal water in there, that even just messes with you even more, because you know yourself, fishing tidal water, you're off 30 minutes an hour, it could ruin the rest of your day.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and then you have to go start skipping spots where you were catching good quality fish because you're getting there late.
Yep.
But yeah, that's my outlook on things. I mean, it's just a matter of making a decision. That's what it's all gonna boil down to me, and just go from there.
Just go for it.
Yep.
I mean, take the crack at the apple. You got the boat, you got the time.
Yep.
Yeah, I would just say freaking go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, and to be honest with you, Thomas, even if I was to go fish the opens, I'm not going to be somebody that's going to go around looking for sponsors anyway, because that's not me. I mean, I would much rather just go and do my thing with what I want to do it with. You know, I don't want to be subject to say, well, you know, I'm fishing with this rod because they sponsor me, or this reel, or they sponsor me, or you know, whatever. If I do it, I'm just gonna go do it on my own, because that's. I mean, I'm not concerned about the sponsorship ride. That's just not me.
So, I mean, with all that being said, the one last thing I wanted to kind of talk to you about here, and then guys, yeah, I mean, just drop anything in chat, just to, you know, if you're still there, if you've got any questions. I know it's getting late. You know, a lot of you freaks want to go watch Swifty and the KC win, you psychopaths. But forward-facing sonar is interesting because you have it, and there's this weird, I think, about mixing old and new. Like, don't be so Randy Blockett that you can't see there's value in learning from it. But also, you know, not just glue your head to it. And it's interesting because you got kids that you work with.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? Like, yeah, there's some positives, but you also need to learn the old stuff too.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. You know, I have Thomas Newman and Caden Ryman, and Thomas. When we started talking about him coming over, you know, I knew Thomas was a big forward facing. He loves forward facing, and Caden don't know as much about forward facing as Thomas. But my thing of it is see, Thomas is looking to go on to a college and do this stuff and possibly go, you know, as far as he can go. But the thing of it is when he leaves me, he's going to be able to know how to do it all, because I'm not going to get stuck doing one thing. I'm still going to want to know fishing 101. You know, I'm going to know when it's April, I know what these fish are doing and where they should be going. And that's what I want these boys to be able to know. Not just go out and drop a trolling motor and flip on a button and start looking for fish, because to me, that's, you know, it works. They've proved it works, but that's just not my style of fishing. You know, just like when I go to the James, I'm probably not going to even cut that forward facing on, because I'm going to run what I know and where the fish should be for a certain time of the year. Is it going to be a disadvantage? No, not so much on the James. I don't know how much forward facing could possibly be that much more advantage over for somebody on the James. But no, my ordeal with the boys is to show them other ways of catching fish, not so much beating the bank of knowing, you know, okay, pull up on this point and parallel or throw a crankbait across this point, you know, a rattle trap, you know, Carolina rig, you know, there's other ways to catch fish in a nutshell. And that's what I'm trying to teach these boys. Not to rely on one way of catching fish. Because for one, you know, that forward facing stuff is not cheap. And to have the better quality and the good setup, it costs money. And that's what I want my boys to take away, that, you know, when they go fishing, they're not going to have to rely on a screen. You know, their brain in certain times of the year and being able to read the water temperature is a big thing. What these fish are doing, and that's just like they're getting ready to go to Smith Lake in Alabama. And, you know, the only thing I've told them so far, I haven't, you know, which I'm going to help them in the air, you know, find their places they need to concentrate and be looking at from different things. But in the springtime, I'm a type of guy that I have learned that if that water is not 50 degrees, you need to have the sun on your back. And that's just something that I have learned over the years, that As long as you get in the springtime, if that water temperature is not over 50, have that sun on your back, and that's the bank you need to be fishing, one in front of you. Because that's where the sun's going to shine most day.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people say, well, fish northeast creeks off your main. I've always heard that from everybody. Always fish the northeast east creeks that lay northeast on the lake. And it's pretty true. You could go with that and learn a lot.
I see your guys' comments in there. I'll make sure we get our questions as we're wrapping up here at the Augusta County Show. You had a couple of seminars that you did this weekend, and we talked about this off camera. I think it's fun that when you told people that you don't like to throw, or you're more passionate about throwing monofilament versus fluorocarbon, you see the looks that you got were shocking. Is it that we just got so marketed by all the corporations about fluorocarbon this and that people just are now ingrained in them not to use mono?
Exactly. I mean, if Berkeley Trilene Big Game quit making line 20 years ago, and they still make it today, the only reason why they're still making it is because there's people like me out here still using it because it still catches fish. And who has ever said that fluorocarbon is invisible in water, because so is mono? I don't know where everybody keeps on getting the idea that fluorocarbon is invisible in water and mono ain't. Maybe you need to check and see for your own eyes that mono is invisible underwater also. And, look at Brandon Cobb. I mean, he's sponsored by Yo-Zuri, copolymer line. Everybody uses copolymer on topwater.
I just feel like it's almost like the wives' tales that you growing up. One that I remember is like, you can't weightlift when you're a kid because you'll become a midget.
Yeah.
And now like everyone's weightlifting and everyone's jacked as football players and young athletes.
Yeah.
And it's like, mono has 10,000 feet of stretch. And, it was like, well, yeah, maybe back in the 70s it did, but the stuff you have now, it's like people need to update, like that's old information. It's not the new stuff.
Yeah. Well, you hear guys saying, I lost a 5-pounder at the boat. Well, was you using fluorocarbon? If you was, did you have it on the right rod? With mono, if you got it on the right rod, you're going to get the rod and you're going to get the stretch. So very seldom will you lose a big fish next to the boat. Everybody else loses big fish at the boat because they got fluorocarbon because they pulled loose because there's no stretch and they got it on the wrong rod. But that's just my opinion. Don't take that for what it's worth.
How sensitive of a rod do you want? I mean, to me, I feel like I can delay my reaction enough that I like as much information as possible. And so I hate the old school glass rods for anything. I want it sensitive enough that I can feel everything. I know exactly once I'm about to hit something.
Yeah.
And you guys know I've talked about this. A lot of times when it's really cold and I'm throwing really small crankbaits, I'll go with spinning gear and braid to where I can almost count every rock and I can tell you if it's a quarter or heads. Like I've gone that far, but I hate when it's so mushy. You end up pulling it a little bit too much and you either get it hung up or you don't detect the bite. Like, where do you find the perfect balance in all that?
Yeah, well, with my crankbait, majority of the time my crankbait rod is a medium action rod. And that
graphite or glass?
No, graphite.
Graphite, okay.
Yep. No, everything I have is graphite.
Okay.
I'm like you. I'm not into the fiberglass or the glass rods. It's graphite.
Okay.
And with today's technology and these rods and stuff, I mean, I don't even know why you would need fiberglass or glass, to be honest with you, because of the graphite rods are as good as what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to rely on your tip, how much, action. I got everything I pretty much have is got a fast action tip. They load up. I don't even set the hook on a crankbait. I just lay into it and keep reeling. My rod will hook that fish.
And the thing about the fiberglass is the whole, I believe, wives' tale was like you want the fish to eat it longer because you're moving the bait too fast. And this is where forward-facing sonar has taught me that's bullshit, because if those fish want it,
they go eat it.
It is insane how fast they are when you watch them.
Oh, yeah.
Like, do not worry about that anymore.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I've gotten spinner baits hung up on trees down on the Chick, and I've seen bass come up out of the water and take it right off the tree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many times you been hung up and a fish unhungs it for you?
Oh, too many times. Too many times.
So, but no, I'm just, my rods are just set up, and that's what I do with them. They don't do anything else. If I'm not cranking, they're in the rod box. If I'm throwing a chatterbait, I have certain rods that I throw chatterbaits on, and that is it. I have one 844G Loomis that the only thing stays tied on it is a spinnerbait. That's it. Nothing else gets tied on that rod because that rod is set up for a spinnerbait. That's it.
How much difference is there between a chatterbait rod, crankbait, and spinnerbait? Is it pretty much the same rod, or are they completely unique?
No, they have their own. My chatterbait rod is both of them that I use for chatterbait are 6'10", and they're both medium heavy action, and they are identical. They both are just set up just for chatterbait. That's it. I won't throw a jig on it. I won't worm fish with it. It's a jerk chatterbait rod only. I have jerk bait rods that's all they're for. I have jig rods that's all they're for. Now the G Loomis 844, that's probably the best all-around rod if you've ever had one in your hand. You can do anything with it. You can use it top water, you can frogging. I probably wouldn't punch with it, but it's a little bit soft for punching. But with a 4-power rod, you can do whatever you want with that. I mean, that's 844.
Yeah.
It's a 7-foot 4-power rod. So top water, everything.
No, Ricky, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. Again, you've already stated it once, but just for people that are listening in, well, actually, we got one more question here. Sorry, Lance, I'm sorry I forgot to get your question there. What do you think would be the best way for a 15-year-old to get into tournaments getting started?
Join a high school league. Contact Jake's Bait and Tackle. Ask for Jared.
Yep.
Depending on where you live, you can get involved in a high school anywhere in your area. I don't know where you live, but just like Frederick County is in Winchester, Strasburg, Edinburgh, we have guys that are actually in our club that live in Shenandoah. So it's not about where you live. It's just a matter of contacting somebody that's in a high school division and join. You can go on Bass Nation Youth and get contacts that way too to see who's closest to you in your area. But yeah, that's where I would start. If I was 15-year-olds again, I would be in a high school division.
There you have it. There you have it, guys. Ricky, thank you so much again for everything you do for our youth, what you did here at the Expo, and for Tiger Crankbaits. Again, guys, go check out Tiger Crankbaits. That link in the episode description to them. And then, so where's the next place people can find you?
You can find me at onefishintheboat@yahoo.com. You can send me that way. I'm pretty easy to find. You can get a hold of me through Jake's Bait and Tackle, Tiger Crankbaits. I'm not hard to find.
And yeah, guys, and then if you want to get a hold of me, I can also kind of get Ricky's information since we cross paths a lot. Ricky, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Guys, with that said, we are done from the Augusta County Fishing Show and Expo. I only have 2 more events, I think, on my plate right now, which is the ProTech February 22nd, and then we have the Jake's Bait and Tackle Kayak Fishing Extravaganza in March. I think that's March 8th, I believe. I probably said that wrong, but I'll find that and get that date for you. Tomorrow, we have have a great episode of the show. I had on the river recovery people that work at the St. Johns River. They're going to talk about the history of grass on the St. Johns, the pesticide spraying, the killing, and what they're doing to try to bring that back. And then, of course, we got Monday Night Live. So Monday Night Live is going to start at 7 p.m., so go check that out on the channel. And we will see you guys next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye.
Hey everyone, quick little announcement here from Fishing the DMV. Our Weekend Warrior membership on Patreon is nearly full. There are only 28 spots still available. Once these spots are gone, they're gone, and the Weekend Warrior tier will be closed to the general public. All members will be locked in indefinitely at a fantastic price point, and they will get all the benefits that they have today, plus any new benefits and discounts that will be added in the future. All Weekend Warriors will receive 5% off their orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off their orders to Tiger Crankbaits, 10% off their orders to Catoctin Creek Rod. They'll also gain access to our private Facebook group community, loads of members-only content. And in 2025, there are going to be tournaments that will be given a massive discount specifically to our Weekend Warrior members. Plus, if you sign up for the year right now, you will get 8% off your already fantastically discounted rate to join the Weekend Warrior program. Link in the episode description. Thank you.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.